Hello Bearcats, this is Unit 15, Chapter 9, 1 and 2, Part 2 of your review. I was cut off after our finding the sum of the first 40 positive integers, so I'm going to do these last three problems on this second part of the video. Alright, the first thing we're going to see is a sigma notation. N is equal to 1, upper bound is 400, and our rule is 2n minus 1. Alright, and they want the partial sum of this sequence. Find the indicated partial sum of this sequence. So I want the sum or the total of the first 400 terms basically. So let's first of all find some terms. So let's find a sub 1. If we find a sub 1, we plug in 1 for n. So 2 times 1 is 2 minus 1 would give us 1. Let's find a sub 2, so we'll be able to find our difference. That means we would plug 2 in for n. 2 times 2 is 4. Minus 1 would be 3. So it looks like the difference between the two terms would be 2. So D is 2. A sub 1 is 1. And the number of terms we're trying to find the sum of is 400. So we have all our information, and we will substitute into our formula n over 2 bracket 2a sub 1 plus n minus 1 times the difference. Okay, so that's our little formula that we need to know, and we're just going to plug in now. So we're going to do 400 over 2 times a sub 1, which is 1, plus 400 minus 1 times the difference of 2. And that is our difference. All right, so when we total all of this up, you're going to get, I'm not going to go through all that, you have a calculator to do that. When you total all that up, you should get 160,000. 160,000 is your total. All right, go Bearcats. Now let's do our two application problems. Okay, the first application problem has to do with Sam's salary. He has a starting salary of $36,800. I'm going to write that down. He's going to get a raise every year of $1,750. I'm going to write $1,750 down. All right, first thing, before I even read any further, I realize that if his raise is going to be $1,750 every single year, then this has to be an arithmetic sequence because it's going to be the same difference every year. And $1,750 would be my difference, so I'm going to label that D. I also know that if his starting salary is $36,800, that would have to be my first term, A sub 1. So I'm labeling as I go. Let's keep reading. What will his earnings be in the 7th year? So I want to know just in the 7th year, not the total yet. I just want to know the 7th year. That means I want a particular term. So I'm going to go over and write the equation for that. That would be a sub n equals a sub 1 plus n minus 1 times the difference. Except I want the 7th year, so my n value would be 7. So a sub 7, the 7th year would be a sub 1, which we know to be 36,800. And n is 7 minus 1, and my difference I said was 1750. And then again, you have a calculator to go in and make those calculations. When you make those calculations, in year 7, a sub 7 is going to equal $47,300. That's what he'll make in year 7. As we keep reading, it also says how much will he earn over the full 7 years. Okay, that means how much is he going to earn all together. That would be a sum. If we're summing something up, then we have to use the other formula. So for sum, remember, and if you write it over and over, it'll be easy. There are two ways to do this. I understand that the video for 9.2 kind of took the other approach. This is just the expanded form of that same equation. So it's the same thing, I just write it all in one form instead of having to calculate the a sub 7 first. Although you could use that and come out the same, and you'd be happy to do so. All right, the formula I'm going to use then is the n over 2 bracket 2 times a sub 1 plus n minus 1 times the difference. And some of that I've already figured out, and that's why you could take that other shortcut. All right, again, we want to know in the total 7 years. So n again is going to be 7. A sub 1 is still going to be 36,800, and our difference is still, excuse me, 1750. So let's plug into our equation. So we're going to have 7 over 2, and then we're going to have 2 times a sub 1, which is 36,800, plus 7 minus 1 times a difference of 1750. All right, and again, you would have your calculator, and if you go through very carefully, be careful of order of operations. If it were me, I'd make sure I do 2 times 36,800. I'd make sure this 7 minus 1 is 6, so 6 times 1750. I would find those separately, then add them together, and then finally multiply by 7/2. Often I see the substitution correctly. I need to see all the substitution on your test to get full credit. And then just strange things happen when you put things in the calculator. So be very careful and check your work tonight with the review to make sure what you're getting in the calculator is what you're actually getting, or what your answer is what you're getting in the calculator. All right, so in this case, it would total up to $294,350. That's what he would earn over that 7-year period. All right, last problem. All right, this last problem is a lot like problem 83 from your classwork that you were supposed to do from 9.2, so it's very similar. Let's read. It says the new teaching theater at Klein High School will have 80 seats on the back row. Uh-oh. So I'm going to write BR for back row, and I'm going to come up here, and this is the front row. All right, so it's going to have 80 seats, and I'm going to say 80 on the back row. The row in front of that will have 2 fewer seats, so it would have 78, and we would continue. Now, immediately I know that the difference is 2. The third row would have 2 fewer, the second, and so on. The row in the front will have 20 seats, so the front row is 20. The front row is 20. How many students can the new teaching theater hold? All right, here's where we have a little issue. This time they don't tell you how many rows, so you don't know the value of n. How many seats can the new teacher? We do want a sum. So our formula again, so A20 is A sub 1. 80 in the back row is A sub, we don't know what that is. We know the difference though, and we know the value of that last one. So we're going to have to take a look at that. I'm going to come over here to the side, and we're going to figure that out in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and write the formula for sum down. N over 2, parentheses, 2 times A sub 1 plus N minus 1 times our difference. And what we do have is A sub 1. We just don't have the n yet. A sub 1 is 20. We don't have the n yet, but we do have the difference is 2. So we need to figure out what the n value is, so that the number of rows we have, so that we can figure out our sum. Now, you could go through and count on a piece of paper and figure it out. You could go the long way and do that, but there's also an algebraic way to do that. So let's think about what I said earlier if you're finding the difference, which we already know. If you're finding the difference, you take the value of the row. So we would take 80, the difference in the value, 80 minus 20, over the values of the row numbers. And we don't know this row number. This is A sub n. So we're going to say n minus 1 at the bottom. But that would be how we would calculate our difference, and we know our difference to be 2. I'm going to put 2 over 1, cross multiply, and solve. 80 minus 20 is 60, so this makes a pretty easy calculation. So I'm going to have 2 times n is 2n, minus 2 times 1 is negative 2, equals 1 times 60 is 60. I just cross multiplied there. And then I'm going to go ahead and solve. So I would add the 2 and get 2n equals 62. And then I would divide by 2, and my number of rows would be 31 rows. Okay, so that was the algebraic method. I do know that you could actually just go through and reduce and count how many rows there were, but you also make sure you have to count row 20 as row 1. All right, so n is 31. And so now we have 31 as our n value. I'm going to go ahead and put n is 31. We can plug it in. So 31 here and 31 here. So if you have the formula set up correctly, then you can go through and do the calculations with your calculator. And once you do, you should get 1,550 seats. All right, go Bearcats. I'll be here about 6:30 tomorrow morning for help. If you have any other clarification before your test, don't forget to fill out your note card. Do all of your homework, our classwork, and make sure that's been turned in for full credit. And then if you're retesting on Thursday for chapter or unit 14, the previous test on vectors, I will stay after school tomorrow to do test corrections with you. Have a great evening. Night, Bearcats.